at one of the avocados. Okay, let's say we want to look for avocados, we search for it, and we have a link through our search. Right? Imagine here, this is our link. We search for avocado, we have a result. We click in it, right? It directly shows us the avocado details over here. Okay, so what happened is deep linking has to actually simulate the backstack. It has to simulate the backstack. It means that not that coming here directly to the avocado and then we don't have anything on our stack. It has to actually create a simulations of the first start screen. Okay, right behind the avocado screen. This one a bit vague if you cannot see it in. I don't have any trouble. So hold on. Okay, so we treat this as a per normal navigations, right? We navigate from the first one, launcher. So this is our start screen, and then we have our plant details here once we selected this one. Okay, now for instance, if let's say you search here, okay, you search here avocados. Alright, avocados here, right? Then you get the results, and somehow, right, we have an event intent to actually send it to it, and you get to navigate to this avocado directly over here. So this selection here actually shown in this apple, but because we are not moving in a conventional way, right, whereby we are not going from the launcher and then to the selections and then to the details, we have a deep linking here whereby we have the URL and then not say URL, the intent that we have to actually launch our avocado here. So what it does is it has to, for deep linking, it has to actually simulate this page, this screen here, my bad, this screen here, right, at your backside. At your backside. Right? Then only your avocado will actually appear at the top. Like this. Right? It has to be, so that's why we call it the deep linking simulations. Alright? Everyone okay with this? Any questions for deep linking simulates manual navigations? So you always have to imagine, regardless whether how you actually start a particular activity or screen, right? Deep linking, you have to do it in a way that it will simulate all the path that is necessary to navigate to that particular screen, right? Even though you jump from one to, let's say, the third screen, right? It has to help you to simulate the second, the first and the second screen in your stack. Okay, so here the questions, why the behavior of the back and up button must be different. Let's do this in our Google Jamboard. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes to try and answer this one. Why the behavior of the back and up button must be different? You can use a text, huh? This one, sticky note. Any other who would like to try? So there's one here. The up button never exits the app, while the back button could exit the app. So what else? What is the difference when it comes to the behavior? Why do we need them to be different? Okay, to simply put it right, because like the examples, the answers that your friend given here, the up button never exit the app, while the back button could exit, right? So the up and the back buttons, we need them to have different kind of behavior, because we want one is for the user to navigate backside in your application itself, and then another one, the back button, is actually to move away from your apps, right? So that's the difference, huh? Okay, so the up button is actually used to navigate within an app based on hierarchical relations between screens. For instance, if there's a screen A displaying a list of items, and selecting the item leads to screen B, right? Which then we actually presents that the item is in more details. The screen B should offer an up button so that you can actually navigate from B to A, right? But for B, the back button, pressing the back button has the same result as pressing an up button, but the occurrence is it will be able to allow the users to, at the end, right, at the start screen, it will allow them to navigate out from your application itself. Okay? Then let's continue on. Any questions for the first part, the 5 principles? No? Okay. So let's move on. We build a dynamic and multi-pane UI using Fragment. So why do we actually want to use Fragment here? Now, when it comes to Fragment, we are always talking about modularity, right? What Fragment do is it introduces the modularity, whereby you can actually have the reusabilities in your activities UI. Okay, how do we actually divide that? we can, how do we actually do that? We can do that by dividing the UI into discrete chunks, as you can see from the screen here. Okay, so instead of having one big UI of everything, we make it into small chunks, right? That's why we have fragments. So activities are an ideal place to put global elements. Okay, I repeat, activities are an ideal place for you to put global elements around your app's user interface, such as a navigation drawer, right? And conversely, if let's say for fragments, it is better suited to define and manage the UI of a single screen or a portion of a screen. Okay, so whatever things that it is not global, right? You can actually put them into a small chunk, which is a fragment. So let's consider one thing. Consider an app that responds to various screen size on larger screens. You might want the app to actually display a static navigation drawer and a list of in a grid layout. So when it comes to smaller screen, you might want to change this app to display a bottom navigation instead, right? And the list is a linear layout. So instead of grid, you become linear layout. So do I have an example here? So for example, over here, so this is a bigger screen because it's in landscape, right? But if we change this to portrait mode like this, then we want the UI to be different. So this is where fragments comes in handy, because fragments always have a modularity, right? So this is overall how the example of the UI is working. If we are in fragment for landscape mode, so we have fragment 1 and fragment 2 side by side. Okay, but when it comes to portrait mode, because we do not have that luxury of more screen size, we have to adjust the fragment to be on top of each other. So different. Okay. So when we manage these variations of activities, right, we will try to separate the navigation elements from the content and make this process more manageable, right? The activity is then responsible for displaying the correct navigation UI, okay, while the fragment displays the list with the proper layouts for larger screens. So what you need to do is you have to divide your UI into fragments that makes it easier to modify your activity's appearance, okay, at runtime. So while your activity is the started life cycle or higher, fragments can actually be added into, replace or remove. Right? You have one activity started, right? We know that if let's say activities started, when it gets destroyed, the whole things are gone. Okay? But with fragments, you have one activity running. Okay? At the same time, you can swap in fragments in and out, regardless. Right? Your activity will stay there, but your fragment is actually swapping in. Fragments will have their own life cycle, so that's why they can actually come in, right? Getting added, edited, or removed because of their own life cycles. Right. So we take a look at this. Always on an activity, right? We saw the class, the functions on create. For fragment itself, we will call them on create view. So what we do in this on create view here, we have our inflator, we have our view group, and also we have our bundle. Right? Then we go into our on create view here to actually create our fragments. So what is layout inflator? This is actually an object that instantiates a layout XML file into the corresponding view. It's just like what we do in our on create. Right? We are inflating the layout. Okay. Then the view group itself is the parent of the inflated layout. Okay. What view group we might have? Linear layout, constraint layout. Those are our view groups. Right. Then bundle itself is the data that we actually sometimes we need to pass data. Okay. So we pass it using the bundle. Okay, so this data actually is about the previous instance of the fragment. Okay, so here how we actually add in the UI. So one, we load our fragment layout. Okay, so from our fragment layout, it's always in the layout folder. Okay, .xml. Go into on create view, and then we inflate it, right? And then we pass it to the activity layout. Okay, we are passing it to the activity layout, and then we go into fragment activities on create. So fragment and fragment activity different. This is the main one. So this is the one that can then actually sub in, sub out, and remove. Then we have this one. How to two methods for fragment to actually communicate with each other, right? Two methods for fragment to fragment communications, right? We can actually use view model. You will actually look at this one in chapter 4. Okay, you can actually use view model or host activity, right? So two fragments should never communicate directly. Okay, why? If you look at this, right, if I communicate from fragment A to fragment B, right, the data might be lost because of what? Because of the nature of fragment. They can be sub in, sub out, and remove. So if let's say suddenly you have a fragment B here who requires data, okay, from A, and you allow them to communicate directly, and suddenly A here get destroyed or removed, what happened? There will be error in fragment B because they do not receive the data from A. So that's why we cannot actually do that. So what we do, we use view model, right? Whatever we have, we pass into view models, and then from view models, we pass to fragment B. Okay, the same thing here, fragment activity. So fragment activity is actually the host activity. So from the host activity, fragment A can actually pass in to our host activity, and then pass it back to fragment B. The same goes for fragment B as well when you want to communicate with A, but no direct contact like this. Any problem with this one? Alright, you will be doing this in your practicals, right? Whereby you can see how we create navigations and how they send data with each other. So the next part is creating navigations component. Right, so in order for us to create a navigation component, we have three things. The first one will be our navigation graph. Second one, navigation host, and we have one more, which is the navigation controller. So what are they doing? For navigation graph itself, this is like the designer view. You can add in all your fragments, right, into this view here. And then from there, you can actually connect each fragment with a navigation path. You can say from fragment A, connect to, when you want to go, you go to fragment B or C. Everything can be done in navigation graph here. Okay, so this is actually an XML resources that contains all the navigation related informations. It is very important also for us to have this navigation graph, because each connections that you create from fragment A to B, for instance, that connections is actually needed when you code your program. Okay, when you code your program, that navigation path is actually needed. But you do not need to specifically code out that navigation path, because when you use navigation graph here, Android Studio will take care of that for you. They will create that path for you, and you just need to code it. Alright? So next, okay, you can see here. So this is one of the example. Start destinations, where is it? Okay, this is a line. If you see the line here, okay, this is the one that I mentioned just now. These are the navigations path. Okay, so here if we say we're going to start with this navigation home here, we have to define, right, what is the start destinations. So when we call the start destinations, we have to give the ID of that fragment itself. Okay, then you'll be able to see what are the fragments that we have in here? So we have navigations, this one, navigation home, and then we have gallery, which is here, and then we have slideshows, which is here. Okay, so this is how your navigation graph looks like. And in here, inside of each of our fragments, we have our attributes almost similar to what we have been doing so far, right? You can control the attributes in here, and what are the actions, okay? So here, action here, right? Okay, you can see home to gallery. So what does it mean? It actually representing the path, right? Let's go down here. Okay, so when we talk about actions, we are actually talking about the path that we created, right? So that's why even the path, the action itself, it will have an ID for you to call, so that when you program, you can actually call it and utilize how the navigation should be. So next, we will have navigation host. So this navigation host itself is actually an empty container that display the destinations from your navigation graph. Okay, after you have this graph, then you will need this host to become an empty container to display it out. So how do we actually call this, right? We have to move back to our activity main, right? Activity main.xml. It's no longer in the navigation graph. What you have seen here, okay, with this tag here, this is the navigation graph. But here, we have to move back to our main.xml, right? And then we have to say, okay, we have a fragment, right? Navigation host fragment content main, and we have a default navigation host. So what it says here, it will intercept the system back button, okay, so that we can actually pass it to our navigation host. Right? So then we look at the bottom. Okay, we have to actually say, okay, what are the navigation graph that we are actually using. So for this one, we are actually talking about mobile navigation. If this one that we have just now is called mobile navigations, then yes, we have to call it as mobile navigations in here when we set our navigation host. Right? Okay, then moving on, we'll have our navigation controller. So what is it? If you look at this one, this is actually an object that manages your app navigations within a navigations host. Okay, we have from graph, then to host, we have host already, and from host, we want to pass it into a controller. As you can see, our controller is the one responsible dealing with the graph navigations in your code or program. Right? So for example here, we created an object navigation controller, and then we say find navigation controller ID. What is it? Navigation host fragment content main. So where do we actually find this? Where do we actually find this? Here. This is it. When we define the navigation host, we give it a name, right? So this is the one. Okay. Then we say navigation controller dot navigate dot actions. Here, this is the path that we want to use. Means that from where to where, right? And then through the navigation host, we pass it to our controller, and through our controller we say, oh, where do we actually want to navigate to, and then what we want to do with it. All right, clear everyone? Any questions? So moving on, what is the main difference between fragment and an activity, and what are the advantages of using fragment and compared to activity? So here, let's paste it here. Okay, so take this time to answer your questions. Alright, well, I'll give you all 5 minutes to go around if you need to. You can go to the toilet, you can drink water or whatever it is, right? Refreshen up yourself. And then come back and answer these questions, huh? So each group must have a representative to actually give the answer here. If there is not enough space, you can actually go to the next board to paste your answer there. So each group have a representative to paste your answer. So those, where's the other groups? Only this one? We have 6 answers, including the one at the back. So here there's one answer. Fragment is created within activities that allows the fragments to navigate to another activity, whereas an activity acts as a layout container for fragments or a view. Navigates to other fragment, you mean, right? This one? Yes. And then fragments help enrich your UI design, pass data between different screens, and adapt to different screens configurations. Activity is an applications component that gives a user interface. The fragment is only part of an activity. It's okay. Right, so this is the one. Okay, the most accurate one over here. Our IT group 2. Right. Then in here, hey, is it the same group? Okay, this one is for question 2, is it? This one is question 1. This one is question 2. Is it? So when it comes to what is the main difference between a fragment and an activity, so activity itself is an application component that give a UI. So the fragment is only part of an activity and is basically contributes to a UI of an activity. So this is the most accurate one. Here, this one, you may want to change to fragment, right? Then it will be better. For this one, the activity provide user interface for user to interact with. The fragment is part of activity which also contributes to resource. Both also, this one okay, right? So the one at the back. Okay. Question 1. Fragment is a part of a specific activity which contains UI for that specific activity. So how about activity here? This one part of it, correct? Okay. So activity is a UI of an active application through which user can interact, and fragment is then part of the activity. It is a sub-activity inside activity. Okay. Yeah, this is something what you wanted to say at the end here. Alright, you can consider this as well. What is this, huh? Alright, so one of the example. Acceptable. Okay, good so far. Right. So any questions from all of you regarding this? Yes? No? So let's move on if there's no questions. Shall we? Questions? No. So let's move on to create dialogue. Right? So what is dialogue used for? There's 3 things. When we are talking about critical informations we want to send to user, then we need to use dialogues. So this dialogue itself will allow the user to actually make decisions, and it encapsulates multiple tasks within a discrete process. So we cannot actually use dialogue all the time, right? You don't have you must design a way to use a dialogue in a proper manner. Okay, you don't everything also pop up in the dialogue. Okay, why? Because if you do so, it will actually render your apps like keep on stalling. Okay, So you have to use it sparingly because they are interruptive in nature. So if we look at this one, what is the difference between the dialog versus notifications and snack bar? Alright. So snack bar itself, okay, the priority is low. Right? We don't have to ask for user actions, whereby it's actually optional. It will actually disappear automatically. Okay? Some of you, I might already demonstrate how to use Toast, right? So Toast is also somewhat like snack bar, but Toast is just displaying messages and it will disappear automatically. Right? There's no user interaction at all. Okay, so that's Toast. Right? Then we have notifications here. So what is the priority? The priority will be medium, whereby we don't actually need user actions, whereby it's like optional. Okay, it remains until it is dismissed by the user or if the state that caused the notifications is resolved. So it means that if you interacted, okay, you check on your email, then that notifications of your email received will be gone. Right? Then of course we have our dialogues, which we were talking about just now. The priority is high. This is the highest and the user action is actually required. So what it does it blocks your app's usage until the user actually takes the dialogue section or exit the dialogue. So this is why we say it's very interactive. Okay, it will we call it gachalo, right? The flow of your app itself. Okay, so if you take a look at here, we have two dialogues example here. One is alert dialogue, right? And then second one, we have a simple dialogue. Okay, so for dialogue itself, right, we can actually go into the material IO, right, to look for the types of dialogues that you can use. And we have also confirmations dialogues, full screen dialogues. So full screen dialogue is the one we try to avoid the most, because unless you really need the user to key in a lot of things, then yes, you go for full screen dialogue. If not, we try to avoid using it. Right? Okay. So when it comes to dialogues, there are things that we need to avoid, which is open additional dialogues. So you cannot open up a dialogue already, right? Like this one here. We create an event using let's say calendar. So you create an event. Then suddenly in here, when they try to key in something, you pop up another dialogue. You say, oh, what do you want to do with this event? Don't do that. Okay? You don't pop one dialogue after another. Right? Don't do that. So, and then we will try to avoid if there's any scrolling content. Okay? Particularly alerts. Try to be as simple as possible, okay, as short as possible. It's only exceptionals include whereby your full screen dialog may open additional dialogues such as speakers, okay, because they are designed to accommodate additional layers of material. This is the exceptional one, okay, but try not to open additional dialogues. Okay. So how does alert dialog looks like? So in here there are three parts, whereby the first one would be the title, right? And then we have our content area, and then we have our actions. What do we want to do with it? Okay, so this is the picker, right? So we can either pick a time or date. This is how the picker looks like in quotes. So as you can see here, this time picker fragments, we actually extend it from dialog fragments. Okay. Then we also have time picker dialog dot on time set listener. Okay. So we always call on create dialog in our first function here. When we create dialog, what we need to have, we also need to have this dialog extension, the class here. Okay. Then we must have three what we call variables to hold our calendar, hours and minutes. Right? So this is the part whereby we actually create a new instance of a time picker and return it in here. So you can change the data format. Okay, it depends on you. And then the activity here is also depends on what activity you are actually passing it into. Let's say it's a main activity, then you have to pass it as a main activity. Right? You can try this code out. So then we want to do something with the time chosen by the user. Okay, what we want to do. Usually this is the part whereby if let's say you're asking them to key in event, right? Then you want to store this into database. Right, and this part here. Okay, going down. So this is how it looks like in the XML, okay, in our layout file. So here, button, okay, this is the attributes, right? Then we have this one, show picker dialogs. When we click the button, then we have to show the dialogs here. Okay. So have you all tried actually using on click directly from your layout file? Have you all tried? No. You can give it a try, right? But the one that I usually use is the conventional way, whereby we create a object to hold our button, and then we set our on-click listener at the main code there. Alright, so questions. Which alert dialog is better and why? So if we take a look here, so which one will be better and then why? For question 1. Who would say it's A? So anyone, put up your hand. Just a quick one. Let me have a look. Or B? B. Alright. So why do you choose B? Easy to understand. Discard draft. How about the others? No one choose A, is it? So for you all, you will feel that discard draft, no yes is a more clear one, is it? Okay. So when it comes to this kind of messages, right, it's actually very subjective and catchy, depending, right? But if you look at this discard draft here, right, instead of no and yes, right, we are actually telling the user what they are doing in their actions. So this action says whether you want to cancel or you want to discard, right? But whereas for B is no and yes. It's not the descriptions of no and yes is not doesn't give the enough information on what is going to be done if I choose that particular actions. If I choose no, then what are you doing? But on the other hand, we say cancel. So cancel is very descriptive, whereby we know that we are not going to do these actions, right? Well, and then like the yes, that what are we doing? But over there, we actually use discard, right? If you notice, right, good UI actually have very good descriptive actions. Okay. So any question here? Understand already? Why is it so? Okay. So how about question number 2 here? Evaluate the following full screen dialog. So is this a must? How do you feel about this full screen dialog? It's a dialog, means that it's popping up and then asking user to key in the things. Do we really need this dialog here? Very right. Why? Okay, it's not that crucial to the extent of popping up as a full screen dialog. right? Okay, good. Okay, so far any questions about dialogues? Those at the back? Those on top? Okay, I notice when I sit down, then only I can see you all. When I stand up, I always have looking at the monitor. Right, navigation drawer. Right, so this one you will be doing it in your next week's practical, most of you, right? Okay, what is a navigation drawer? So whenever we display the app's main navigation options, then we put it in our navigation drawer. Okay, so what is it recommended for? Less than 5 top level destinations, okay, or okay, more than top 5 level destinations, or more than 2 levels of navigation hierarchy. Okay, so means that your navigations, you have different hierarchy, and then like Grab itself, right? They have a lot of options to select from, like ride, like food. Okay, then you will need navigation drawer. Okay, but if you're telling me that you have an app with only three top level destinations, do we use navigation drawer? No, because we don't have to do that, right? Okay, or you want to set up a quick navigations between unrelated destinations. So all these options here you have to know, because let's say there's a case, right? It asks you, should I actually use navigation drawer or not? Then you have to depends on the condition that they give you. What are the top 5 level destinations? Is it more than 2 level of navigations? Okay, and then what is the quick? Is there a need for a quick navigations between unrelated destinations or not? Okay, so then we have tabs. So when it comes to tabs, right, it organizes and allows navigations between groups of contents, and the contents should be related and at the same level of hierarchy. Okay, as you can see here, we have trips, we have flights, we have explore. So all these things are actually grouped together. Okay, so if for instance the example that we have here, right, when it comes to trips, then we'll know, okay, where are we going? If we have a lot of them, then it will be grouped in here. Okay, so there is also a different type of tabs. We have fixed tabs, whereby we only, let's say we only have 3, then we fix them. Or we also have scrollable tabs. Okay, such as this one, this is actually scrollable. Now, we are almost at the end of our class, right? Okay, so before you go, let's answer these questions first. So 1, compare navigation drawer and tabs. So compare navigation drawers and tabs. So same thing, each group give me an answer.
现在有时间要去创新，red break，下一行我们再 red break，等一下我们就会被创新。稳了，稳了，我死掉了。
自己开机就塞我。那个点击这个，看得到。
Okay, so continue on. We have answer here. Use navigation drawer when there is equal or more than 5 level of targets. Okay. Then we have tab. User navigates different screen by tapping on the tabs along the top or bottom of the screen. Drawer, a slide out drawer contains links to different screens. Okay, so navigation drawers when app has a strong primary view and or few other alternative ones. Use tab when the user need to switch views frequently. This one about the answer, I would say this is the most acceptable one. Okay, over here. As you can see, navigation drawer is what? Navigation drawer is a place whereby we group our important navigations. Alright, it depends on if you have, which is like this one, it mentioned here, ST here, saying that we have more than 5 level of target, then yes, we're gonna use navigation drawer. Right? That tab itself is whereby we have actually a grouping of similar category, okay, or those at the same level of hierarchy. Okay, so what do we use for a news app? Should we use tab or should we use navigation drawer? Use tab. Okay. Why do we use tab for news app? We have drawer, tab, drawer. Okay. So a news app, right? Let's think of it. In a single news app, how many level of destinations do we have? A lot, right? We have entertainment, we have business, we have local news, we have international news, and then we have what else? Did I mention sports? Right? So we might be needing it to group together, right? And do we need a specific navigations to it, to the news? Yes? Yes or no? Are we navigating to the specific news or are we navigating to the category? We are actually navigating to category, right? So if that's the case, now, are we going to use drawer or tab? Still drawer? Tab will be more suitable here, right? Because we only have how many category? Let's say we have 5 to 6. Then yes, we do display the news. Okay. So this question itself, to make it more clearer, let's say you want to read the news. Okay, a list of news. So those lists of news must be in a drawer. No, sorry, tab. Okay, should be in a tab. Okay. How about a weather app? What do you think? A tab? Okay, it depends what you want to view on, right? For instance, if you only want to display a select preview of a week, okay, what we call that weather forecast for a week, then they're gonna show in tabs, right? Okay. Then if let's say we want to go to different city or no need to be different city. So we talk about just the forecast of 1 week, right? Then a contact app. Should we go for drawer? Is it necessary to have drawer for contact app?
No.
If you look back at our contact apps, right, we don't have drawer over there. We just have tabs. Okay, so most of them are tabs. Okay, so now give me one example. What kind of app do need drawers? What kind of app do need drawers? One example. Shopee, yes. Alright, someone?
Lazada.
It's the same nature. Shopee, Lazada is the same nature. Because they have a lot of navigations going through. Right? Grab?
Facebook.
Facebook, yep. Okay. So any questions for navigation drawers and tabs? Alright, I believe when you do your assignment, you can decide on which one to use. Right? Is it navigation drawer or tabs better for your design? Okay. Any questions from top? All okay from the top? Okay, right. So then we shall end today. So make sure you sign in. This is your attendance code. Thank you everyone for coming. So I'll see you all next week. Cannot sign in.
走过去的，走过去还有15分钟。
没事，可以。等一下。